What's up, shitheads? On the last podcast episode, Clint and I went over some of the computer forensics involved in the Josh Duggar trial. It was also the first SoJo Files podcast that had a paired YouTube video with the podcast. And today we will be picking up where we left off on the last episode. So again, if you go to the description of this podcast episode, you will find a link to the paired YouTube video that goes with this podcast episode. So you will be getting not only an audio podcast, but if you would like to watch the paired visual for this podcast, again, the link is in the description of this podcast episode. And we are going to be trying to be doing more of that going forward. So if you would like to follow along with not only the podcast, but the paired videos that go with the podcast, make sure to get on YouTube and subscribe to the SoJo Files YouTube channel. Now, let's get down to business. And by the way, she is a computer expert testifying in a worldwide federal case. So it's not like she's just some normal person searching the internet. Like, she's claiming to be a computer expert. She's certified to be a computer expert.
Right.
Well, you just saw another computer expert just solve that in 60 seconds.
Yeah, there were several things that were somewhat disturbing about the case, and that's one of them. So here, let's go back to our virtual machine. And you can see uTorrent is now installed. So I'm going to go ahead. It takes a little bit to launch the first time, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it to launch. And then I'm going to go back, and we're going to install VLC.
Which, again, is an app that anyone can download. I have even since downloaded it since trial.
Yep, it's a handy little
you just
media
look
player.
it up.
So we'll let that install for a little bit. One of the things that they talked about was remote access, and they really harped on this software Remmina being installed. So let's go look at that real quick. So Remmina is installed by default on Ubuntu. You can see it right here. So they really harped on, well, this proves that someone could have accessed the computer remotely because this is a remote access utility. So if we launch Remmina and we look at it, you can see it's Remmina Remote Desktop Client. Now, the important part of that title is the word client. In computing terms, you often have servers and you have clients. A server is a computer that hosts a service that other people can connect to. A client is a computer that can connect to that service. So you can have systems that act as both a server and a client, but when they're accepting connections, they are considered servers, or they're called servers. When they are establishing connections, they are called clients. So here, Remmina Remote Desktop Client. So just based off that name, that tells me that this software doesn't accept incoming connections. It creates outgoing connections. And if you pull up the website for the software, you can dig around in here and you can find all of this stuff. It's great software, how it works and all of this kind of thing. It's a client. It does not allow incoming connections. So this would allow you to, for example, if you are working from home, you could use Remmina potentially from your personal computer to connect to your work computer and do your work there without having to go to the office and get your work computer from your desk. But if Remmina is installed on your personal computer, you can't connect to your personal computer from your work computer. You would have to have a server application on your personal computer. So it's exactly the same here. Just because Remmina is installed doesn't mean that someone can connect to this computer. It means that you could use this computer to connect to someone else.
So basically, Remmina, his version, cannot be used to remote into his computer. It's actually saying the exact opposite. You can use that computer to log into, I don't know, maybe his home computer or whatever it was. But with Remmina, remote access is not possible because it has to be that computer remoting into a different computer. It is not possible for an outside computer to remote into this computer through Remmina.
And I checked just to be sure. Like I was wondering if, well, maybe there's a Remmina server piece and we're just missing it. I haven't been able to find it. I do not think that Remmina makes anything other than clients. So the defense bringing this up was another classic example of them not really understanding what's going on. They just saw the word remote and latched onto it and said, that's our case. We're going to go with that.
And it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. Like, use Google.
Yeah.
Use Google. You paid all this money to a forensic expert. Like, get your money's worth. What happened? Like, jeez.
Yeah. So, here, this is uTorrent that we have installed, finally. So uTorrent is the software that was used to download the material in the case. It's a fairly popular torrent program. At one point, it was the most popular torrent program. I don't know if it still is. It's been a while since I've looked at that type of thing. One of the things that got brought up is also there were logs that were talking about the connections and that kind of thing. And the port numbers in the logs were changing. And for the purposes of this, just kind of think of a port as a thing that accepts connections. So, for example, if you have your boat, you got to take it down to the boat slip and launch it out into the lake. That's a port. You have to put your boat into the port there for it to work and go in and out. Well, Michelle Bush categorized these changing port numbers as advanced techniques. And the advanced techniques, she said, this is indicative of someone that really knows what's going on. Well, you can come in here to options, and preferences, and connection. And you can see that currently we are using port 57660. I can click this random port button and it changes to port 45500. I can click it again, and it changes to port 60013. Now it's 56007. There's no sequence here. That's just, it generates a random port every time you click on that button. So you can tell, yes, this is a very, very, very advanced technique. It's clicking a button.
Clearly this is too much for the average Joe.
Yes. Another thing is uTorrent actually does support this option of randomize port each start. So if you check this checkbox and hit OK, every time you start the software, it will automatically pick a new port for you. So if that option was checked, which again, we don't have the forensics evidence, we can't look at it, but if that option was checked, then the changing port numbers would simply indicate that the uTorrent application was closed and reopened. That would be it.
Another red herring. Imagine that.
Another red herring. So now, the next part of the demo, we're going to actually download a movie and stream it through VLC. We're going to go back to archive.org. One of the cool things that archive.org does is they not only categorize those websites through the Wayback Machine, but they also have like all kinds of like copyright-free things where the copyright has expired movies. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down here and scroll too far because my computer's freezing up a little. We're going to click here and we're going to search. She used a Charlie Chaplin video, so we're going to search for Charlie Chaplin. And we're just going to pick this first one here. Maybe.
I did not remember it being a Charlie Chaplin film, but I do remember his being It's a Wonderful Life, Agent Fitrell's being It's a Wonderful Life. I was like, thanks for throwing us a bone here.
Oh, that's funny.
Appreciate that.
So, yeah, you can see there's different download options for this old Charlie Chaplin movie. I'm just going to grab a torrent because we're testing it through uTorrent. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say copy link location. And then I am going to go down to uTorrent. And I'm going to go up to File, Add Torrent from URL. It's going to automatically paste in that URL of the file that I want to download. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to go grab that torrent file. It's going to look at all of the metadata inside the torrent file and see here's the files that I can download. If I don't want to download a particular thing, I can uncheck it. But I'm just going to tell it to download everything. I'm going to hit OK. And so now it's downloading. I can click on this download, and I can click on peers. I can see who it's downloading from. I can go to files, and I can look at all of the individual files. Here's this chaplain.avi. I happen to know that that is the main media file. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy streaming URL. We'll use that in a minute. Here, if I scroll over, I can see this progress bar of the files being downloaded. And you can see that the files aren't being downloaded like from start to finish. They're kind of like this one's got something maybe a quarter of the way through and then almost a little over halfway through. This is kind of downloading it as it finds those pieces. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to VLC. We're going to launch that. It's going to take just a minute. I should have launched VLC before I went to archive.org. That's how that works. It never does it when you are wanting it to happen, does it?
Oh, no. That would be too easy.
There it goes. Okay, so I'm going to go to Media, Open Network Stream. I'm going to paste in that, as I click the wrong thing apparently. I'm going to paste in the media stream if it will stop with its... Oh, come on. I may have to reconnect to the virtual machine here. It's being stupid. Let me close and reconnect. This is the downside.
Things were going way too well.
Right.
They were going way too well for us.
Can't have that happening.
Absolutely not.
Close. Go File, or Media, Open Network Stream, Paste. Oh, I think okay. Let me just do a right-click paste instead. There we go. So I hit play. Now it's going to start buffering that file. Now the important thing when we're downloading, when we're streaming, there was a big distinction that was made between downloading and streaming. And they were trying to make the argument that downloading and streaming are very different. And they were saying basically, oh, well, it was streamed, it wasn't downloaded. It wasn't that big of a deal. Well, let me show you something. So here you can see that now that I've started streaming this file, the download progress is going from the front forward. So the only difference between a download and a stream in practical terms is that a download, you have to wait for it to complete before you can view the media file. Whereas with a stream, you start playing the media file while it's being downloaded. So it's not that it's a either or type thing. It's oftentimes like you have to download the media in order to stream it. It's just treated differently as it's being downloaded that makes the difference.
So a download has to be 100% before you hit play, whereas streaming will start playing with, let's say it's got 10%. It'll start playing from the beginning, and it will play it while it is downloading it.
Correct.
And that's streaming. But all in all, they are both downloads, except one has the ability to play before it is 100% downloaded, whereas the other one does not.
Yep.
But it's both a download.
Exactly. If you've ever watched like a Netflix movie or YouTube or anything like that, and you're playing right along, and then it just all of a sudden pauses and it says buffering, what that means is that you hit the point in the video where it hasn't downloaded enough for it to keep playing. It has to download more. That's what buffering is. It's downloading media, and it tries to have a buffer ahead of where you are in the movie. So it'll look at your connection speed, it'll look at all of that kind of stuff, and it'll say, okay, for this speed connection, I need to download 5 minutes of video before I start playing it, because it's going to take me 5 minutes to get through the buffer. So it'll buffer that amount, and then hopefully, if everything works correctly, you never have any pauses in the middle. That's the whole idea with streaming, is that it's continually downloading while you're watching the movie. So one of the interesting things on the case is they talked about some of the material was deleted as soon as it was finished downloading, and the defense tried to play that off as basically, well, he didn't watch anything because it was deleted 30 seconds after it finished downloading. Yep. Again, we don't have the playback logs, we don't have anything like that, but that isn't necessarily a positive thing, because if you're streaming the media, if it takes 30 minutes to download, and then it was downloaded and then deleted 30 seconds later, well, you could have been watching it that entire 30 minutes that it was being downloaded.
So it can throw the time, like you just
Correct.
said. It could look like, oh, it was downloaded and deleted within 30 seconds, so obviously they didn't watch it, when really could have been watching it the entire time and deleted it 30 seconds after completion of the video.
Right. And again, without that detailed timeline, there's no way for us to know, but that is a possibility. So.
That is very, very, very interesting, because that is a very key point that they like to bring up. Well, only this much of it was played, or it was deleted after this long.
Right.
Well,
so the next thing I wanted to talk about was this actual streaming URL here. So this was brought up, the VLC playback logs. It'll have this URL, and it had timestamps, and this is where like the changing random ports were and all of that type of stuff. So this is a big, long, scary looking thing. But we're going to break it down and explain what's going on here. So this is called a URL, which is a universal resource locator. It tells your computer where to go look for things. So it starts off with HTTP. That is telling your computer that this is a hypertext transfer protocol URL. Sounds Greek. All it means is it's a website. That's all that means. URLs start off, they have the protocol, then they say : / That's just telling it, okay, that's the protocol. The next part is the actual URL. So we have this word pairing, a colon, a whole bunch of letters and numbers, and an @. So this whole section right here between the : / and the @, this is a username and password pair. So the username here is pairing. Then there's the colon, and then the next part, that B145, blah, 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 that is an encrypted password. So whatever that is, who knows? The @ symbol is telling us that it is going to take this username and this password, and it's going to log into this next part, which is the server that we're connecting to. The server is 127.0.0.1, and the port, again with another colon, is port 57660. So that port 57660, we can go over back into uTorrent, and we can look at our connection options, and we can see that is the port that uTorrent is running on. So that's where that port number comes from. And the important part here is this 127.0.0.1. This is a very special, what's called an IP address. And we talked about IP addresses in the other episode. This is a very special IP address. So most IP addresses are going to be public or private. This IP address is called a loopback. So a loopback address is any IP address that starts with this 127 right here. And the special property that a loopback address has is it references the current computer. And it always references the current computer. So when computers communicate across the network, they have to have, the two computers talking to each other have to have unique IP addresses. So if my IP address is, 65.35.45.10, and yeah, well, we'll edit that out.
That's gonna have to be edited. Oopsies.
Where was that? That's an hour in. So, whoops. SoJo.
We'll just bleep it out. We'll just bleep it.
Yep. SoJo's IP address can't be the same thing. We wouldn't be able to talk to each other. It causes all kinds of problems on the internet. Oh, blooper reel.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So you have to have unique IP addresses. With the loopback address, all the addresses in that range always refer to the local computer. And this is one of those things that a lot of tech people know that refers to the local computer, but they don't know the specific details of how it refers to the local computer. In court, Michelle Bush mentioned that this streaming URL, which it obviously wasn't exactly this because this I copied from my computer, but it was similar to this. She mentioned that this streaming URL, she had no proof that it was streamed locally because it's referencing an IP address that goes through the router. And that right there was, out of everything that was said as part of that testimony, that was the biggest red flag to me. So that means that, well, let me back up. The issue there is I can understand tech people not understanding how a loopback address works. So let me read the actual rule here. So this is RFC, which is basically, think of it as the rules of the internet. RFC 1122 was published in 1989, section 3.2.1.3. It's published on page 29 of the document. It says, talking about addresses that start with 127, it says, internal host loopback address. Addresses of this form must not appear outside a host. So the important part of that is that if I have a packet, which is just a bit of network data, and it says that its destination is 127, the network card on the computer will not forward that packet out to another computer. It can't happen. It will keep that packet inside the computer because all addresses of that 127 type are always destined for the computer that they're on. What that means is that when Michelle Bush said that this went through the router, she was incorrect. And she was very incorrect. Again, I can understand if a tech person doesn't understand the details on how something is working, but this was a pivotal part of their case. And if you're going to testify in federal court and hinge your case off of how something works, I would highly recommend that you look up so that you actually know how that it works.
Like, for the love of God, use Google, people. Yeah. The bare minimum.
Yeah, and it's funny because she specifically said that IP address goes through the router. And there are addresses that we call non-routable, which means that they cannot go through a router. And that 127.0.0.1 address is almost always used as the de facto example of a non-routable IP address. So just extra funny right there.
Extra pitiful is how I take it. Like you take it as funny, but I take it as pitiful. Like the.
Yeah. It's very bad.
I mean, that is actually proof that it never left.
Correct.
His HP computer.
Correct. The funny thing is that they're arguing that they couldn't tell if this was streamed locally or remotely while looking at a playback log that was pulled from the local computer. So if I watch a movie in VLC on my computer, it doesn't show up on SoJo's computer that Clint watched a movie. It shows up on Clint's computer that Clint watched a movie, because that's how logging works.
Like, even if, like, we're sharing a computer screen right now, so I can see Clint's computer. Even if we were like, whatever, let's watch The Hangover, and he streams it from his computer, I can still see it from my computer because we're sharing a computer screen, but it's only going to log on Clint's computer.
Exactly. So the fact that they're pulling the playback log from the HP computer means that it was played on the HP computer.
Not a good look once again.
Not a good look once again.
I'm honestly wanting to know, like, if they realize how badly what they said played out.
I mean,
or if it's like, like, we're going to do our best. I mean, I get that. Obviously, you should. Okay, I get that. Everyone's entitled to a defense, all that good stuff. But damn.
So I think we've talked about this. I think what it goes back to is that Josh was so incredibly obviously guilty from the get-go that the only hope the defense had of coming close to winning was just to confuse people.
Absolutely.
And so that's why there was a great story toward the end of the day, that day that I was there before I left. Gilfan spent 5-10 minutes questioning Michelle Bush about a thing called BootCamp. And BootCamp is a program that's made by Apple that lets you install Windows on your Mac computer. And it does all the partitioning for you. It handles all of that. It does the driver installation. It's very easy, very straightforward. And I think they were trying to contrast using BootCamp versus setting up something manually. I think that's what they were going for. But again, spent 5 or 10 minutes talking about BootCamp and what it's used for and how it works and all of that type of stuff. And then he asked her, is there any evidence that BootCamp was used? And she said no. And
oh, great.
It struck me as like, well, what was the point of that? Like, why go down that huge rabbit hole if it's irrelevant? You know it's irrelevant. Like, this is your witness that you're talking to. Presumably you have talked to her about the types of questions. You know that BootCamp wasn't used. Why are you bringing it up?
Because they kept us listening to her for hours and hours and hours and hours and multiple days.
Yep. That's the only thing I can think of is that they didn't have a case. They really didn't have a case. And so they were just throwing buzzwords and stuff at the jury and just trying to impress them with knowledge and confuse them.
But here's my issue. So there are appropriate ways to use certain people throughout a field, right? Like, in my personal opinion, Carly Marshall was the most epic pick to question Jim Bob in pretrial hearings, because we all kind of know how trashy Trash Bob is, and he doesn't like, strong, badass women, and that was going to play out exactly how it played out. Well, here it's like the opposite of that. They, in my personal opinion, picked Michelle Bush because she was an attractive, young tech female, and you saw how it played out.
Yeah. And this kind of feeds into one of the things that I wanted to talk about. And really, when you and I first started talking, this was the thing that made me decide that I wanted to make this video right here. Was Michelle Bush is a expert in my field, and I think that there's going to be a couple of things that are going to come out of her testimony. And part of it is I am a white male talking about a female in my industry, and it's about 30%, between 30% and 33% of the industry is female right now. And so part of the issue is going to be, people are going to attack me for going after her and saying you're just going after her because she's a woman. And I guarantee you that's going to happen.
Oh, well, you're a white man and a white man is hated in 2022. What's up? But as a female, I feel the exact same way you do. And, somebody's got to say it. So
right
here we are.
So that's going to be one outcome, is that people are going to be mad at me for going after her because she is a female in tech. And we have so few females in tech that there's kind of some people feel like we just need to not say anything and we don't want to scare people off. And we absolutely don't want to scare people off. Like it's a problem. There should be closer to 50% of people in tech should be women. And it's not anywhere near that right now. But I think that she is doing a disservice to the industry as a whole. And part of that is her performance, or all of it is her performance in court. There's going to be people who are going to hear about what she did and look at the forensics that she performed and are going to say, oh, well, see, this is clear evidence that women shouldn't be allowed to do whatever, which is asinine. Like, of course.
Yes, that goes without saying. Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's really going to hurt my female friends in the field because they now there's now going to be this perception that Michelle Bush was hired because she was pretty, that she was hired because she was a female. And I can't speak to that. I think that she was very good with the jury. I do think that she was a very good choice when it came to talking and engaging with the jury. She
absolutely was. And there were people that thought she did a good job, like we have discussed. But again, I think it plays into aesthetics and presentation versus content. And my issue is she has her own business, so I don't believe that she could possibly be half as ignorant as what we saw, but she went up there and did what she did in such an obvious way that how is that not going to look bad for women and computer people in general?
The disturbing thing is, like you said, there were people that thought she did a good job, and she very, very, very clearly did not. And so part of the concern is that people are going to see that and think that's how it works and that's what they need to be doing. And I mean, I thoroughly enjoy computers. I've been in the IT field since I was 16 years old. I thoroughly love it. I want people to be engaged in this field. I want people to be excited about computers. I want people to learn. But I don't like it when my field is perceived as fraudulent, which I think is going to happen based on her performance. And
I think it was a disservice. Well, no, I have the same rant because, I think Carly Marshall is brilliant and she's a badass. And, I don't know that this is why she questioned Jim Bob, but her questioning him definitely, in my personal opinion, played into how he responded to questioning. And flip that over to the negative side, it's like you used a female, I'm sure, because it was a male client and because of the type of crime that it was. And of course, that's a strategy and there's nothing wrong with strategies, but how that played out and how it was perceived. And for me, it's not even from a computer aspect. It's just as a woman, watching a woman get up there. For you, it's from the computer aspect. But for me, it's like, no way. No way.
Yeah.
No.
It was exceedingly frustrating. Just everything involving it was very, very frustrating.
But, I mean, and to me, and I hate to say this, felt very obvious. Like, they picked her because she's very well spoken, she's very attractive, she's very good with her presentation. She looks at jury members, she looks at people in the audience, she looks at who's questioning her. You know, her presentation was great. The content was not there, but the presentation was great. And just, I'm perturbed. I'm irked. I'm irked. I'm still irked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
That's our TED Talk for today. But
yeah, thank you for coming to the TED Talk. That was.
Yeah, thanks for joining our TED Talk here. Yeah, we got to do better. We got to do better.
Yeah, I guess that's really the message is do better. Like, don't accept that. I know for me personally, I would never have been okay with that performance, because you could tell that she was doing just enough so that it looked like she was actually doing a forensics investigation. And like I've said, Gelfand kept harping on follow the forensics. Well, for as much as they were harping on following the forensics, there was shockingly little forensics in their entire case.
I actually don't know what they followed. I mean, this is going to be a whodunit. This is a classic whodunit. It's like the equivalent to DNA evidence. Where it at, though?
Yeah, it was very, like, again, Josh was exceedingly guilty. Like, there was just very little case that they could have had at all, when it came down to it.
And I said this back, like, in the early podcast. I was like, it's so hard for me to sit here and listen to them, like, ask questions that just make no sense. And it wasn't that the questions made no sense to me. It was that I knew the questions literally made no sense. And so I'm like, jeez, like, the struggle is real. Yeah. But now y'all know that King Debunk over here just debunked that whole defense single-handedly.
So yeah, I mean, that was the goal here. I think we'll see what this comes out to, but we talked about kind of splitting this into 2 different episodes. We'll see what that comes out in the edit. Do we want to go ahead and do the third part now, or do we want to save that for another day?
Totally up to you. You tell me. I mean, if you want to keep going, we can. We can stop and take a quick break if you want to, or we can keep going. Or
we have given ourselves an out, I feel like. So let's go, and if we hate it, we can just re-record this part at a later date.
Okay.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Now, we are obviously not done nitpicking the computer forensics involved in the Josh Duggar trial just yet. So Clint and I will be coming back with some more computer forensics to hash out with you all soon enough. And we will see you guys on the next computer episode.